It stood there, before the mirror in my new country home's bathroom, drying happy tears from its wrinkled cheeks. At 69, after 45 years of marriage and 2 years of mourning my husband's death, I had finally done something just for myself. This little house, with its garden full of possibilities and its windows overlooking the fields, was mine, all mine. I had spent my life savings, $75,000 that I had saved penny by penny, denying myself small pleasures for decades. But it was worth it. For the first time in my life, I had a place no one could take from me, a sanctuary where I could plant my flowers, read my books, and simply exist in peace. I touched the freshly cream-painted wall, breathed in the scent of new wood, and felt something I hadn't experienced in years. Pure freedom. That morning, I had eaten breakfast in my tiny kitchen, listening to the birds sing. I had watered the potted plants I bought in the local town and planned where I would put my favorite rocking chair. Everything was perfect. Everything was mine. The phone rang as I was putting my few treasured possessions into the master bedroom closet. I saw my daughter Estelle's name on the screen and smiled, thinking she might finally be calling to congratulate me on my new home, though I knew she had been against the purchase from the start. "Mom, it's a waste of money," she told me repeatedly. "You should stay in your apartment, closer to us." Closer to them, not with me, closer to be available when they needed me. "Hello, my dear daughter," I replied with that maternal joy that never fades, no matter how many times you've been disappointed. "Mom, get ready. I'll be there in an hour with 20 people from Jasper's family," she said, without even a hello, in that authoritative voice she'd developed since her marriage. "Make food for everyone and get our rooms ready. We're only staying 2 weeks." The world stopped spinning. I literally felt the ground move beneath my feet. My heart began to pound so violently I thought it would burst from my chest. 20 people? Estelle, I just got here. I haven't prepared anything. I don't even have food for. Mom, don't be dramatic. This is your family now. You have to welcome them properly. Jasper says his cousin Iva is coming with her 4 small children, his brother Virgil with his wife and twin kids, and Aunt Minnie and Uncle Clyde are coming with their families too. It's vacation time, and they need a free place to stay. Your house is perfect. But Estelle, I don't have room for so many people. This is a small house with 2 bedrooms and 1 bathroom. And besides, there's no air. But we're your family, you're obligated to help us. Besides, why did you buy this big house if not for us to use it? Don't be selfish, Mom. We're already on our way. So get busy and get everything ready. Oh, and make sure there are enough clean towels for everyone. The kids will want to swim in the river, so prepare some snacks for when they come back too. See you soon." She just hung up. I stood there, holding the trembling phone in my hand, feeling all the happiness I'd felt just minutes before vanish like smoke. 20 people in my new home without warning, without asking if I wanted to, if I had the means to provide for them. And the worst part, they spoke of my house as if it were a free family motel. I looked around my small house with 2 bedrooms and 1 bathroom. Where would people sleep on the floor? In my living room, which barely held a small sofa. My refrigerator was practically empty. I barely had a few eggs, some milk, and a couple of tomatoes I bought in the local town. How was I supposed to feed 20 people with that? With what money would I buy food for so many people for 2 weeks? But what hurt me most wasn't the impossible logistics of the situation. What shattered my heart was the realization that my opinion once again didn't matter. My daughter had decided for me. She had disposed of my house, my time, my money, as if I were her employee and not her mother, as if this house, which I had bought with the sweat of my brow and the savings of my entire life, were a free hotel for her husband's family. I sat on the edge of my new bed, which I had so carefully chosen, thinking of the quiet mornings I would spend there reading, and began to feel that familiar hollow sensation in my stomach. It was the same feeling I got every time Estelle and her husband showed up at my old apartment. They'd help themselves to whatever was in my fridge, use my washing machine, watch my TV, and leave everything dirty and messy, as if it were the most normal thing in the world. I remembered vividly the day after my husband's funeral, when I needed emotional support the most. Estelle had shown up with empty boxes and a fake smile. "Mom, you have too many things. You need to get rid of all this," she had told me, packing my late husband's books without asking me. "We'll take these. You don't need them. At your age, you don't read that much anyway." And I, in my pain and confusion, had let her take half of my memories, including the gold watch that had belonged to my father-in-law. When I sold the apartment to buy this house, she had insisted that I give her the money so she could invest it better. "Mom, you don't understand finances. I know how to make this money grow," she had told me with that condescending smile I hated so much. When I refused, she didn't speak to me for a whole month. And now, on the first day in my new house, she was already asserting her right to use it as if it were hers. Tears began to roll down my cheeks as I looked out the window at the garden I had dreamed of tending. In an hour, all this silence, this peace, this feeling of freedom would turn into chaos. I sat on my bed for several minutes, trying to process what had just happened. The silence of my new home, which had seemed so beautiful and soothing just moments before, now felt heavy and ominous. In less than an hour, this sanctuary I had built with so much sacrifice would become a place of chaos and demands. I slowly stood up, feeling the weight of my 69 years more than ever. My legs trembled slightly as I walked into the kitchen, where I opened the refrigerator with a mix of hope and despair. Reality was even worse than I remembered. 3 eggs, half a gallon of milk, 2 tomatoes, a piece of cheese I bought yesterday, and a bottle of water. That was all. Absolutely everything I had to feed 20 people. I opened the cabinets with trembling hands, a can of beans, another can of tuna, an opened package of rice, salt, pepper, and oil. I didn't even have enough plates. I had bought a service for 4, thinking that would be more than enough for my needs. I never imagined my daughter would turn my home into a family refugee camp. I looked at the clock. 50 minutes. 50 minutes to perform a miracle. I grabbed my purse and car keys, knowing I had to drive to the local town to buy food. But when I checked my wallet, my heart sank even deeper. After paying for the house, basic furnishings, and moving costs, I only had $4,500 left until next month. How was I supposed to buy food for 20 people for 2 weeks with that? The drive to the local town felt endless. Every minute that passed was a minute less to prepare what little I could. In the small grocery store, I rushed through the aisles like a desperate woman, mentally calculating every dollar I spent. Rice, beans, pasta, tomato sauce, some cheap vegetables, bread. Nothing fancy, nothing special, just simple food that would be enough for many people. The final bill, $3,500. Almost everything I had left. When I got home, I only had 20 minutes. 20 minutes to turn my small kitchen into a restaurant that could feed an army. I put water on to boil for rice and pasta. I opened cans like a maniac. I chopped vegetables with tears streaming down my cheeks. They weren't onion tears. They were tears of anger, of helplessness, of deep sadness over what was happening. As I cooked, I couldn't stop thinking about how I had reached this point. After my husband's death, I had tried to be the perfect mother, the understanding mother-in-law, the available grandmother. If Estelle needed a babysitter, I was there. If she needed money, I was there. If she wanted to use my car because hers was in the shop, I was there. Always available, always ready, always saying yes. I remembered the time Jasper, my son-in-law, showed up at my old apartment with 3 friends without warning, expecting me to cook and serve them for a whole soccer weekend. "My mom isn't in town, and you cook so well," he had told me with that fake smile that annoyed me so much. And I, as always, had rushed to the grocery store, spent my money, and cooked for them as if I were their personal employee. Or the time Estelle had asked me to watch her sister-in-law's kids because she had a family emergency. 3 small children for an entire week, without paying me a cent, without even asking if I could do it. When I mentioned I had to cancel my doctor's appointments because of the kids, she had said, "Oh Mom, don't be so dramatic. Besides, it's good for you to have something to do so you don't feel so lonely." Lonely? That word echoed in my head as I stirred the tomato sauce. I felt lonelier surrounded by my family than when I was truly alone, because true loneliness is honest. It doesn't pretend to love you while it uses you. The sound of approaching cars pulled me from my thoughts. I looked out the window and saw 3 vehicles full of people getting out as if arriving at an all-inclusive resort. Children screamed, adults laughed, suitcases were pulled from trunks. And there was Estelle, orchestrating the spectacle as if she were the official hostess of my house. "Mom," she called from outside. "Come help us with the bags." I stood there in my kitchen, holding the wooden spoon I'd been stirring the sauce with, and something inside me broke. Not in the dramatic way you see in movies, but in a quiet, definitive way, like the thinnest thread snapping under too heavy a weight. I left the kitchen and opened the front door. What I saw took my breath away. People, from babies to older adults, all spilling out of the cars as if arriving at their favorite vacation home. Some were already wearing swimsuits, others carried coolers full of beer, and all, absolutely all, looked at me with that expectant smile, as if they knew they would be served like royalty. "Cora," called Iva, Jasper's cousin, carrying a crying baby. "What a beautiful house. The children will be so happy here. I hope you've prepared a lot of food, because we're hungry from the trip." Virgil, Jasper's brother, came closer and clapped me on the back as if we were old friends. "Mother-in-law, this is perfect for vacation. Is the food ready yet? The kids haven't had lunch." Of course the children hadn't had lunch, because they knew Grandma Cora would be there to fix everything. As always. Like the reliable employee who never says no. "Mom," Estelle said, approaching with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "I hope you've prepared the rooms. Iva and her family will need the master bedroom because the baby cries a lot at night, and we can sleep in the other. The others can set up in the living room." The master bedroom. My bedroom. The room where I had just hours ago put my things, where I had imagined waking up every morning and seeing the garden from the window. Without asking me, without consulting me, they had already decided I would sleep on the sofa in my own house. I saw all these people invading my space, touching my things, talking about my house as if it were theirs. And for the first time in many years, I felt something other than resignation. I felt a small but genuine spark of something I had forgotten existed. Indignation. But I didn't yet know what to do with it. "Mom, the food." Estelle called from the doorway, as if I were a waitress who had taken too long to take the order. "The kids are hungry, and we adults want lunch too before we settle in." I returned to the kitchen like a zombie, feeling the eyes of 20 people on my back. On the stove, the rice was slightly sticking to the bottom of the pot. The pasta was on the verge of being overcooked, and the tomato sauce looked more watery than I would have liked. But it was there. It was what I had managed with the little time and money I had. I began to spoon food onto the few plates I had, knowing they wouldn't be enough. Indeed, after serving 8 plates, they were all gone. I had to improvise with cups, deep bowls, and even a pot lid as a plate for one of the smaller children. The humiliation was complete. "Is that all?" Virgil asked, seeing his plate with the small portion of rice and sauce I had been able to serve him. "I thought there would be meat or chicken. Don't you have anything else?" "It's just that you came so suddenly and I didn't have time to," I began to explain, but Jasper interrupted me. "Cora, it's all right. We understand you didn't expect so many people, but you could have made an effort. We're family, aren't we? Besides, this house is beautiful. You've surely saved money to buy better things." Money saved. If they only knew I had spent almost everything I had left on this food they were criticizing, maybe they wouldn't. Probably they'd still criticize it. Jasper's family had this particular ability to make you feel guilty, no matter the circumstances. "Grandma," said one of Virgil's twins, a child of about 8. "Do you have video games like at the other grandparents' house?" "No, sweetheart, there are no video games here," I replied with the kindest voice I could muster, so as not to vent my frustration on an innocent child. "And cable TV and Wi-Fi," he continued. "Not yet, darling. I just moved in and haven't subscribed to those services." The child looked at me as if I had told him I lived in a cave. "Then what are we going to do for 2 weeks? This is boring." Iva, while changing her baby's diaper on my dining room table, interjected. "Cora, we need you to go to town and buy diapers, baby formula, and baby food. I forgot to bring enough for 2 weeks. We also need sunscreen, mosquito repellent, and a few other things." She handed me a handwritten list on a napkin. "It's all noted here. You can go this afternoon." I took the list with trembling hands: diapers, baby formula, sunscreen, mosquito repellent, feminine hygiene products, headache medicine, aspirin, antacids, children's shampoo, antibacterial soap, laundry detergent. The list seemed endless. I mentally calculated at least another $900. The last $100 I had left. Iva, I said, trying to remain calm. I don't have much money right now. I just bought the house and... Oh, Cora, she interrupted, laughing. Don't be so dramatic. These are just small things. It won't break the bank. Besides, it's for your family. I'm sure you've saved something for emergencies. Emergencies? They were my emergency, but not the kind I had planned for. Minnie, one of Jasper's aunts, approached with a beer in her hand. A beer she had gotten from her own cooler. Luckily, because I didn't even have drinks. Cora, where can we put our things? We need space in the fridge for our beers and groceries. I opened my small refrigerator, already filled with the few things I had bought that morning. Well, you can move my things out then, he said, beginning to remove my items from the fridge to put his own in. And where is the room where Clyde and I will sleep? I only have 2 rooms, and Estelle said that. Oh, don't worry, we can sleep in the living room. Just make sure there are enough blankets and pillows. It gets cold out here in the country at night. Blankets and pillows for 20 people. I had exactly 3 blankets and 4 pillows in the entire house. My house, turning into a charity hotel. Meanwhile, the children had discovered my garden and were running between the potted plants I had bought with so much love that morning. I saw one of them trample my little tomato plants, which I had planted just hours before, full of hope and illusion. Kids, be careful. I called from the window. Oh, let them be, Virgil called back. They're children, they need to run and play. That's why we came to the country, so they could be free. Free in my garden, destroying my plants, with my money, paying for my food, while I became the hotel employee for all these people. Estelle came up to me as I was washing plates in the small kitchen sink. Mom, I need to talk to you. Jasper's family is really happy to be here, but I think you could try a little harder to make them feel welcome. I turned around, hands full of soapy water. Try harder. Yes, Mom. The food was simple, and the house feels a bit cold. As if you didn't want us here. Remember, this is an opportunity for you to get to know Jasper's family better. You should be grateful they want to spend time with you. Grateful. That word echoed in my head like a slap. Grateful that 20 people invaded my house without permission, spent my money, criticized my food, destroyed my garden, and treated me like their personal employee. Also, Estelle continued, I hope you're not planning on charging them anything for their stay here. That would be very stingy of you. Charge them something. The idea hadn't even occurred to me, but now that she mentioned it, why not? If it were anywhere else, they'd pay at least $150 a night per room. 20 people, 2 weeks, that would be thousands of dollars. But I said nothing, not yet. I just nodded and continued washing dishes, feeling that small spark of indignation I had felt before begin to grow very slowly in my chest. That night, while 20 people slept comfortably in my house, I lay awake on the small sofa in the living room, listening to the snoring coming from all sides, staring at the ceiling, and wondering when exactly I had lost control of my own life. The answer came to me in the darkness. I had lost it piece by piece. Every time I said yes when I wanted to say no. Every time I put others' needs before my own. Every time I allowed myself to be treated as if my time, my money, and my space had no value. But for the first time in a long time, I also realized something else. I still had time to regain that control. I woke at 5 a.m. with terrible back pain from sleeping on the sofa. The silence of dawn lasted exactly 30 seconds before the chaos began. Iva's baby started crying, waking all the other children, who immediately ran through the house, screaming and playing as if it were an amusement park. I got up from the sofa, feeling each of my 69 years in my joints, and went to the kitchen to make coffee. I needed caffeine to survive what was coming, but when I arrived, I found Virgil already there, rummaging through my refrigerator as if it were his own. Good morning, Cora, he said, without looking up. Where's the coffee? And we need milk for the kids' cereal. I don't have any cereal, I replied, trying to maintain a neutral tone. What do you mean, you don't have cereal? What are the kids supposed to eat for breakfast then? It was an honest question, and I didn't have an honest answer. I didn't have cereal, I didn't have enough milk, I didn't have enough of anything to feed 20 people for 2 weeks. My small pantry was designed for a single person who ate simply and sparingly. Can I make scrambled eggs? I offered, knowing I had exactly 6 eggs left after the ones I had used yesterday. 6 eggs for 20 people? Virgil asked, laughing. Let's go to town to buy real food, and fast, because the kids will be hungry soon. Come on. As if it were a joint decision, as if the money were from both of us, as if I hadn't just yesterday spent my last savings on a meal they had criticized. Ivor appeared in the kitchen with the baby in her arms and a grumpy face. Cora, I need to boil water for the bottle, and I also need to wash these clothes because the baby wet himself during the night. She handed me a bag full of dirty clothes that smelled terrible. Didn't you bring enough clothes for the baby? I asked her. Yes, but I didn't think he'd get so dirty. Besides, you have a washing machine here. Isn't it easier to wash here than to carry so much clothing? Easier for you. More work for me, more cost for water, electricity, and detergent for me. The children began to come into the kitchen like a pack of hungry wolves. 5 children between 4 and 12 years old. All asking what was for breakfast. All expecting the magical grandmother to conjure food out of thin air. Grandma, I'm hungry, said the smallest girl with such an innocent face that it broke my heart. It wasn't her fault to be in this situation. I know, sweetheart. Let's see what we can do, I replied, opening empty cabinets and trying to perform miracles. Clyde appeared, yawning and scratching his stomach. Cora, do you have coffee, and not that instant coffee? I expect something decent. Decent coffee. I had just gotten up from my own sofa, after being evicted from my own bed, and he was demanding gourmet coffee. I only have instant coffee, I told him. Really? Well, I guess we'll have to go to town to buy real coffee too. And while we're at it, we can buy everything we need for these days. We again. As if we were partners in this disaster. Estelle came down from my bedroom, where she had slept comfortably in my bed, looking perfectly rested. Good morning, Mom. Is breakfast ready yet? Jasper is hungry and doesn't like to wait. Estelle, I don't have enough food for. Mom, we already talked about this yesterday. You need to be more organized. We're 20 people. You can't improvise. Why don't you make a proper shopping list and go to town? We can stay here and watch the house. Watch my house, while I spent my money to buy food for them. Jasper appeared behind Estelle with that fake smile I knew so well. Mother-in-law, good morning. I hear you're going to town. Can you bring cigarettes and beer? What we brought won't last 2 weeks. We also need charcoal for grilling tomorrow. Cigarettes, beer, charcoal. The list of expenses kept growing, and my wallet kept shrinking. Jasper, I don't smoke or drink. I don't know what brands. Don't worry, any brand is fine. The important thing is that we have enough to have a good time. Have a good time with my money in my house, while I worked as their personal employee. Minnie joined the group in the kitchen. Cora, last night I spoke with Clyde and we thought it would be a good idea to have a big barbecue for the whole family. We can invite more relatives who live nearby. What do you think about organizing something for the weekend? More relatives? I asked, feeling my blood pressure rise. Yes, we're a big, close family. It'll be fun. We just need to buy meat for about 30 people. Nothing special. Meat for 30 people. I mentally calculated at least another $1,000. Money I definitely didn't have. I don't think I can afford that. Oh, Cora, Ivor interrupted. Don't be so petty. This is a family gathering. Besides, with what you're saving by not paying for a hotel for all of us, you can surely afford a barbecue. Not paying for a hotel, as if being in my house were free. As if my time, my space, my peace were worth nothing. The children, meanwhile, had found my few packages of crackers and were eating them directly from the pack, scattering crumbs all over my freshly cleaned kitchen. Kids, don't eat those. I called. What are those crackers for, Mom? Estelle asked, with an annoyed tone. They're just crackers. The kids are hungry, and you haven't prepared anything for breakfast. At least let them eat something. Something. My crackers, my food. My last food reserve in the house. Mom, Estelle continued. I think you're being a bit selfish. This is a wonderful opportunity to spend time with family, and you're just complaining about little things like crackers and money. Aren't you happy to see us happy? Happy. They were happy spending my money, sleeping in my house, eating my food, and treating me like their employee. Of course they were happy. I stood there in my kitchen, surrounded by 20 people looking at me as if I were the villain of the story because I didn't have enough food to feed them for free for 2 weeks. And something inside me finally clicked. It wasn't a dramatic explosion. It was more like a puzzle piece that had been misplaced for years finally falling into place. Suddenly, I could see the whole picture with a clarity that surprised me. These people didn't love me. They needed me. There was a huge difference between those two things, and I had believed for years they were the same. All right, I told them with a calm that surprised even myself. I'm going to town and I'll buy what you need. Everyone smiled, satisfied that they had won another battle against the helpful grandmother. But as I took my purse and car keys, I wasn't thinking about food or shopping lists. I was thinking about something entirely different. I was thinking about the law office I had seen yesterday in the local town, and a conversation that was perhaps long overdue. For the first time in days, I left my house with a genuine smile on my lips. The drive to the local town that morning was the most liberating I had had in years. For the first time since my family arrived, I was alone with my thoughts, with no one demanding anything from me, no screaming children, no adults treating me like a housemaid. The silence in the car was like balm for my wounded soul, but I didn't drive directly to the grocery store, as they expected. Instead, I parked in front of a small coffee shop I had seen the day before and sat down to have a real coffee while I collected my thoughts. I needed time to process what I had understood that morning. Are you all right, ma'am? Asked the waitress, a middle-aged woman with a kind face. You look a bit troubled. I smiled sadly. Let's just say I'm in a complicated family situation. Ah, she said, nodding understandingly. Family. Sometimes they're the ones who hurt us the most, aren't they? Her words hit me like lightning. It was exactly that. My own family was the one hurting me the most, and I had gotten so used to the pain that I had started to think it was normal. After the coffee, I walked through the small town until I found what I was looking for. Otis Clark, attorney at law. The sign was simple but professional. I took a deep breath and went in. Good morning, a man in his 50s with a friendly face greeted me. How can I help you? I need legal advice regarding family situations, I said, feeling a little ridiculous but determined to continue. Otis invited me to sit down and offered me water. For the next hour, I told him everything. From Estelle's call to the invasion of my house, from the expenses they forced me to incur to the complete disrespect for my property and my money. The man listened without interruption, occasionally taking notes. Mrs. Wolfe, he finally said, what you are describing to me is financial and emotional abuse. The fact that they are family does not give them the right to use your property without permission or to force you to spend your money on them. But they're my family, I murmured, repeating the excuse I had used for years. True family respects. It does not exploit, he replied firmly. Have you ever considered setting legal boundaries? Legal boundaries. The idea seemed as strange as it was liberating. What kind of boundaries? I asked. Well, for example, your house is your private property. You have the absolute right to decide who can be there and under what conditions. If someone refuses to leave when you ask them to, they are technically trespassing. Trespassing. My own family. Also, Otis continued, if so many people are using your property as accommodation, you could legally charge them for the services you provide, food, lodging, basic utilities. In any hotel, they would pay hundreds of dollars for what you are giving them for free. Could I really charge them? I asked with a mixture of hope and fear. Of course. It's your house, it's your resources. If they chose to come uninvited and without financial contribution, You have every right to set commercial terms for their stay. I left Otis's office with a folder full of documents and a new perspective on my situation. I had drafted a formal letter outlining the terms for commercial lodging on my property, with rates per room, per meal, and for services. I also had information about my rights as an owner and the legal steps I could take if anyone refused to respect my decisions. My next stop was the bank. I wanted to know exactly how much money I had left and how much I had spent in the last 2 days. The numbers were alarming. In less than 48 hours, I had spent $3,500 of my meager savings. At this rate, I would be completely broke within a week. The bank manager, a young man named Amos Miller, reviewed my account with a concerned expression. "Mrs. Wolf, these expenses are very high for your usual income. Is everything all right?" he asked me. I briefly explained the situation, and he nodded understandingly. "Look, it's none of my business, but I've seen similar cases. Older people financially exploited by relatives. Have you thought about limiting your spending?" "I'm starting to think about it," I replied. "If you need help controlling your expenses or setting up a budget that protects you from unintended spending, we can help. We can also configure your account so that larger expenses above a certain amount require special authorization." It was another tool I didn't know existed, another way to protect myself from my own misguided generosity. Finally, I went to the grocery store, but this time I only bought the bare necessities. Rice, beans, pasta, tomato sauce, some cheap vegetables. No luxury items, no meat for barbecues, no beer or cigarettes. I spent exactly $75. When I arrived home 3 hours later, I was greeted by a chorus of complaints. "Mom, you took forever," Estelle exclaimed. "The kids are hungry, and so are we." "Where's the meat for the barbecue?" Minnie asked. "And the beer?" Jasper added. "The cigarettes?" Clyde insisted. I saw them all standing in my living room in my house, expecting me to solve all their problems with my money. And for the first time in years, I felt no guilt, I felt clarity. "I only brought staples," I said calmly. "Rice, beans, pasta. Enough so no one starves." "But what about everything we asked you for?" Iva insisted. "I didn't buy that," I replied simply. The ensuing silence was deafening. 20 people looked at me as if I had lost my mind. "What do you mean, you didn't buy it?" Virgil asked in disbelief. "I don't have money to buy meat for 30 people. Or beer, or cigarettes, or all the other things you asked me for. I only have money for basic necessities." "But Mom," Estelle interjected with that condescending voice I hated so much. "We know you have money saved. Don't be so stingy." I took the papers I had received from the bank and showed them. "These are my bank statements. In 2 days, I've spent $4,500 of my savings. I have less than $100 left until next month. There's no saved money, no secret reserves. This is all I have." The papers went from hand to hand like evidence in a trial. The faces of disbelief turned into faces of annoyance. "Well, then we'll have to look for alternatives," Jasper finally said. "We can all contribute to the expenses." "Excellent idea," I replied, taking the other folder from my bag. In fact, this morning I went to an attorney and prepared a document outlining the commercial rates for accommodation on my property. Silence returned, but this time it was different. It was the silence of people who had just realized that their victim had stopped being a victim. "It's $250 per room per night, $75 per person per day for meals, and $40 per day for basic utilities like water, electricity, and laundry," I continued, reading the document. "So far, in 2 days, the total would be $4,080. I could have heard a pin drop. "You're charging us money to stay in your house?" Estelle asked, her voice shrill. "No," I replied as calmly as possible. "I'm offering you the option to pay for the services you receive, or to find accommodation elsewhere." For the first time in years, I was in control of the conversation. The ensuing explosion was epic. 20 people talked at once, shouting, protesting, trying to make me feel guilty with all the manipulative tactics they had perfected over the years. But something had changed in me. It was as if I had built an invisible wall that their hurtful words couldn't penetrate. "This is ridiculous," Jasper shouted. "We're family. You can't make us pay to stay in your house." "Since when did you get so greedy, Mom?" Estelle added, with crocodile tears in her eyes. "Dad would be turning in his grave if he knew you were charging his own family money." Mentioning my late husband was the last straw, but not in the way she expected. Instead of breaking me, it gave me strength. "Your father," I said with a firm voice, "worked his entire life so that I would have financial security. He would never have allowed his family to treat me like a housemaid in my own home." "We're not treating you like an employee," Iva protested. "We're giving you the opportunity to be with your family." "Be with you," I repeated with a bitter laugh. "Iva, since you arrived, you've made me wash your baby's clothes, boil water for his bottles, and demanded I buy diapers and baby formula with my money. Is that being together?" "But we're family," she insisted. "That's what family does, isn't it?" I replied with a clarity that surprised even myself. What family does is respect each other, contribute equally, and not take advantage of each other's generosity. What you are doing is exploitation. Virgil approached with a threatening look. "Cora, I think you're losing your mind. Maybe you need medical help. This isn't you." "You're right," I replied unflustered. "It wasn't me before." The old Cora let herself be pushed around, spent her savings on people who treated her badly, and confused being exploited with being loved. But that Cora no longer exists. "Mom, this is embarrassing," Estelle cried. "What will people think if they find out you charged your own family for lodging?" "The same people who would think badly of you for coming uninvited into an elderly woman's home and expecting her to entertain you for free for 2 weeks, I retorted. Minnie tried a different approach. "Cora, let's be reasonable. We understand you have expenses, but these rates are excessive. We can give you something symbolic. $300 for the entire stay." $300? I repeated slowly, as if considering the offer. "For 20 people for 2 weeks. That's less than $1 a person per day. Do you know how much you spent on gas to get here? Probably more than $300 per car." "But that's different," Clyde protested. "Different? Why?" "Because your money is worth more than mine. Because your expenses matter, but mine don't." The living room filled with murmurs and long faces. I could see them looking at each other, trying to find a new strategy. Then my salvation appeared in the form of a woman around 60, with a basket of vegetables in her hands. It was Eula, my neighbor, who had come to welcome me to the neighborhood. "Good morning," she said from the open doorway. "I'm Eula. I live next door. I wanted to meet my new neighbor, and oh, excuse me, I see you have visitors." "Please come in," I said, grateful for the interruption. "These are relatives who came to visit us." Eula stepped inside and immediately sensed the tension in the room. She was one of those older women who had seen so much in life that they could assess a situation in seconds. "What a large family," she remarked with a smile. But her shrewd eyes were already analyzing the scene. "It must be expensive to feed so many people. I hope they're contributing to the costs." The ensuing awkward silence was telling. "They're not contributing?" Eula asked with genuine surprise. "Oh, what a shame. In my day, if you visited someone, you always brought something or helped with expenses. Especially if there were so many people." "But we're family," Estelle mumbled. "Exactly why," Eula replied energetically. "Family should care for each other the most. You know what? My daughter lives in the city, and every time she comes with her grandchildren, she brings the complete groceries. She says it's not fair for me to have to spend my pension to feed her whole family." I could see Eula's words having an effect. It was one thing for me to tell them they were exploiting me, but quite another for a stranger to confirm it. "And where are you all from?" Eula continued with innocent curiosity. "From the city," Jasper replied dryly. "Ah, the trip must have been expensive. Gas, food on the road, and then arriving and finding everything paid for. How lucky." Although I assume you all agreed to help Cora with the costs for so many people. Every word from Eula was like a needle pricking my family's conscience, or at least their pride at being exposed before a stranger. Eula, I said, would you like to have some coffee? I'd like to get to know you better. Gladly. But don't worry about me. I see you already have your hands full with so many people. As I made coffee for Eula in the kitchen, she followed me. Honey, she whispered, I don't know if it's my place to say, but these people don't look like they're here out of affection. They look like they're here out of convenience. Her words were like balm. Someone else saw what I had seen but denied for years. Is it that obvious? I asked. Child, I've been on this earth for 60 years. I've seen everything. These people came and expected to be treated like kings. And they look like they haven't slept well, and they're spending money they don't have. I broke down a little. But they're my family. True family doesn't exploit, child. True family cares for their elders. They don't take advantage of them. Eula lovingly placed a hand on my shoulder. Would you like me to tell you something? My sister had the same problem with her children. They lived off her, treated her like an employee, spent her pension. Do you know what she did? What? I asked hopefully. She set boundaries. She told them, you visit me when I invite you, for the time I determine, and you contribute to the costs. If you don't like it, find a hotel. At first there was drama, shouting, emotional blackmail, but then they realized she was serious, and it worked. Of course, they visit her now and then, always bring something, always help, and treat her with respect, because they learned that mama's love isn't free if they confuse it with exploitation. When we returned to the living room with the coffee, the family had been murmuring among themselves. I could see they had reached some kind of consensus. Jasper cleared his throat. Cora, we've thought a lot about it and we believe we could perhaps contribute something to the costs. Not the exorbitant sums you're proposing, but something reasonable. How much do you consider reasonable? I asked. $300 for the entire stay for all of us, Estelle said. Eula almost choked on her coffee. $300 for 20 people for 2 weeks? Children, the cheapest motel in town charges $150 a night per room. The math was relentless, and they knew it, but I had already made my decision. $300, I repeated slowly, as if considering the offer. I saw them all looking at me with expectation in their faces, thinking they had gotten their way again. 20 people for 14 days, with 3 meals a day, accommodation, water, electricity, gas, laundry, and cleaning. Exactly, Estelle said with a triumphant smile. See, we're reasonable. We want to contribute. Eula looked at me with that expression that only wise women have when they see something good coming. She had perfectly understood what was happening. All right, I finally told them. I accept your proposal. Everyone breathed a sigh of relief. They thought they had one, but I continued, and saw their faces harden. With one condition, since this is now a commercial transaction, I want you to sign a lodging agreement. An agreement? Virgil asked suspiciously. Of course. If you're paying for services, we need to clearly define what those services include and what they don't. This is for everyone's protection. I took out the papers Otis had prepared and placed them on the coffee table. This agreement states that for $300, you have the right to sleep on the living room floor, receive 1 simple meal a day, rice and beans, have access to the bathroom at specific times, and nothing else. 1 meal a day. Iva cried. But we expected 3 meals. Of course you can have 3 meals a day, I replied gently. But that's included in the premium package, which costs the $4,080 I originally mentioned. This is absurd. Jasper exploded. You're crazy if you think we're going to sign that. You don't have to sign it, I said with perfect calm. You can find accommodation elsewhere. In fact, I think that would be best for everyone. Mom. Estelle cried. You can't kick us out. We're your family. I'm not kicking you out, I replied. I'm giving you options. You can pay the commercial rates for the services you want. You can use the basic services you can afford. Or you can look for alternatives that better fit your budget. Eula applauded slowly. Bravo, Cora. That's exactly what my sister had to do. Clear options, fair terms, no emotional blackmail. You stay out of this. Estelle yelled at Eula. This is a family matter. You're right, Eula replied, standing up. It is a family matter, and a good family doesn't treat their elders this way. She walked to the door, but before leaving, she turned to me. Cora, if you need anything at all, you know where I live. And if these people give you any trouble, don't hesitate to call me. Here in the local town, we look out for each other. After Eula left, silence fell in the living room. I could see the gears turning in their heads, trying to find a new strategy. Minnie tried the guilt approach. Cora, your husband and I were very close. He saw me as a sister. Do you think he would like to see you treat his in-laws this way? My husband, I replied, taught me to value myself. He taught me that true love is shown in actions, not words. And he taught me that allowing others to abuse you is not love, but cowardice. Clyde tried intimidation. Cora, I think you don't understand the situation you're putting yourself in. There are many of us, and you're alone. It's not smart to make enemies of your family. His words would have scared me before, but now they only confirmed what I already knew. These people didn't love me. They needed me, and if they couldn't use my love, they resorted to fear. Are you threatening me in my own home? I asked with a calm that surprised me. That's not a threat, he quickly replied. I'm just being realistic. The reality, I said, is that you came into my house uninvited, expecting free services you can't afford. The reality is that you refused to contribute adequately when I asked you to. And the reality is that now, when I offer you fair options, you resort to threats and intimidation. Iva began to cry. It was a dramatic cry, designed for manipulation. I can't believe how cruel you've become, Cora. My baby needs stability, and you're throwing us out onto the street. Your baby, I replied, needs parents who can afford his basic needs without exploiting an older woman. If you can't afford a vacation, perhaps you shouldn't take one. The children, who had been playing in the garden, ran inside. Grandma, why is everyone yelling? Asked the smallest one. My heart broke a little. The children were innocent of everything, but their parents were using them as emotional shields. The adults are having a serious conversation, I replied gently. Why don't you go play outside a bit longer? But we're hungry, said one of the twins. Is the food ready yet? I looked at all the adults in the living room. No one moved to take care of their own hungry children. They expected me to do it, as always. Parents, I said, your children are hungry. In the kitchen, there's rice and beans you can prepare for them. You're not cooking? Virgil asked in disbelief. I cooked yesterday and the day before yesterday. Today, you can cook. But we don't know how to cook. Iva protested. Then perhaps it's time to learn, I replied. Or you can take the children to town for a meal. There are several restaurants. Jasper stood up abruptly. This is too much. Estelle, pack up. We're leaving right now. Where? Estelle asked frantically. We don't have reservations anywhere. We'll find something. Anything is better than being here with this version of your mother. I sat there, watching them frantically pack their things. Part of me was sad at the chaos, but a larger part felt relieved. Mom, Estelle said, when they had finished packing everything. This isn't you. I don't know what happened to you, but I hope you think about what you've done today. Have you destroyed your family for money? No, I replied, standing up to look her directly in the eyes. I have found my dignity and learned the difference between family that loves me and people who use me. You'll regret it, she cried as she left. When you're alone and sick, don't come asking us for help. I prefer to be alone and with dignity than accompanied and without respect, I replied. One by one, they got into their cars. This time there were no tears from the children, because they had understood that this visit was different. This time there was no shouting or dramatic protests, just the resignation of people who had lost their favorite victim. From my window, I watched them drive down the dirt road until they completely disappeared. For the first time in 3 days, my house was silent. A genuine, chosen, dignified silence. The silence that followed their departure was not empty, as I had feared. It was full of peace, of possibilities, of a tranquility I had forgotten existed. I walked slowly through my house, touching my belongings, seeing my spaces, and the invasion of 20 people who respected neither my property nor my person. The kitchen was a mess. Dirty plates piled up, crumbs everywhere, the refrigerator left open, sauces spilled on the cabinets. They had used my things as if they were disposable, without any care or consideration. But instead of feeling anger, I felt a strange satisfaction. Every plate I washed, every surface I cleaned, was a small reclamation of my territory. I was just drying the last plate when I heard a knock at the door. For a moment, my heart sped up, thinking they had returned for another round of manipulation and blackmail. But when I opened it, I found Eula with a steaming pot in her hands. "I made a pot roast for 2, she said with a knowing smile. "I thought you might be hungry after all that battle." I invited her in, and we sat at my dining table, which now, after being overcrowded with 20 people, seemed enormous for just 2. "How do you feel?" Eula asked, serving the wonderfully fragrant stew. "I don't know," I replied honestly. "I'm afraid I've done something terrible. I just sent my entire family away." Eula stopped serving and looked directly at me. "Honey, may I ask you something? Before those vultures came, when was the last time you truly felt happy?" The question surprised me. I thought of the last few years, of Estelle's visits that always ended with me feeling used and empty, of the calls that only came when they needed something, of the family gatherings where I cooked and cleaned while others enjoyed themselves. "Yesterday morning," I finally replied, "when I was alone in my new house, watering my plants and planning where to put my furniture." "Exactly," Eula said, nodding. "You were happy when you were alone, in peace, enjoying what you had built with your hard work. Do you find that terrible?" "But family is supposed to be the most important thing," I murmured, repeating what I had been taught my whole life. "Family is the most important thing," Eula replied emphatically. "But those people weren't your family. They were parasites disguised as family." Her words hit me like a revelation. Parasites disguised as family. It was exactly that. "You know what bothered me most about the whole scene?" Eula continued. "That none of those adults cared about you. No one asked how you were doing. If you had enough money, if it was too much work for a woman your age. Everything revolved around what they needed, what they wanted, what they expected." She was right. In 3 days, not a single person had asked how I was, if I needed help, if I was comfortable. It was as if I were invisible, except when they needed me to cook, clean, or pay. "My sister told me something very wise when the same thing happened to her," Eula continued. "She told me, Eula, if someone truly loves you, your well-being matters to them. If someone is just using you, your well-being is irrelevant, as long as you can satisfy their needs." We ate in silence for a while, and I thought about those words. It was true. My late husband always cared about my well-being. If I was tired, he cooked. If I was sick, he took care of me. If I had expenses, he contributed. It was a relationship of reciprocity and mutual care. What I had had with my family in recent years was the exact opposite. I gave, they took. I sacrificed, they profited. I cared for them, but they only cared about what I could do for them. "Do you think they'll come back?" I asked Eula. "Oh yes," she replied with certainty, "but not today. Today they're angry and their pride is hurt. But when they run out of money from hotels, or if they need something from you, they'll come back with tears and promises of change." "And what should I do if that happens?" "Stand firm. Remember how you felt these last 3 days. And remember how you feel now. Feelings don't lie, child. If you feel better without them than with them, then that's telling you something very important." After Eula left, I decided to call Otis to tell him what had happened. "Excellent," he said enthusiastically when I recounted the day's events. "You did exactly the right thing. You set clear boundaries, offered fair options, and when they chose to leave, you let them go with dignity." "But I'm afraid they'll come back." Mrs. Wolf, he interrupted gently. Are you afraid they'll come back because you miss them? Or because you fear they'll pressure you until you give in again? The question made me pause. I didn't miss them at all. I didn't miss the chaos, the demands, the constant feeling of not being enough. What I feared was my own ability to give in to pressure again. I'm afraid I'll give in again, I admitted. That's normal, he reassured me. That's why we prepared the legal documents. If they come back, you have legal support to uphold your boundaries. And you also have your neighbor Eula, who seems like a good ally. That night, for the first time in 3 days, I slept in my own bed. The silence was beautiful. There were no crying babies, no running children, no snoring adults in my living room. Just the gentle sound of the wind at the windows and the occasional chirp of a cricket. I woke naturally at 7 a.m., without the chaos of 20 people demanding immediate breakfast. I made coffee just for myself, 2 scrambled eggs just for myself, and ate in peace, looking out the window at my abused but still salvageable garden. After breakfast, I went out to assess the damage to my plants. Some were trampled, others uprooted, but most could recover with care. It was a perfect metaphor for my life. Damaged but not destroyed, capable of healing with the right care. I was replanting my tomatoes when I heard a car approaching. My heart sped up, but when I saw it was an unfamiliar car, I relaxed. An older man got out of the vehicle and approached with a friendly smile. Good morning, Mrs. Wolf. I'm Mr. Hayes. I live at the end of the road. Eula told me you're new to the neighborhood. Good morning, Mr. Hayes. I'm Cora Wolf. Very pleased to meet you. Pleased to meet you, Mrs. Wolf. I've come to offer you my services. I have a small gardening and maintenance business. I see you have some mistreated plants there. We talked for an hour about gardening, about the local town, about the quiet country life. It was the first truly pleasant conversation I had had in days. Mr. Hayes didn't want anything from me, except perhaps an honest job for which he would charge a fair price. You know what, Mrs. Wolf? He said before leaving. Eula told me a bit about your family situation. I want you to know that here in the local town, we have a saying, better alone than in bad company. And you're not alone. You have neighbors who respect and value you. After he left, I stayed in my garden, thinking about his words. He was right. I wasn't alone. I had neighbors who respected me, who valued my well-being, who didn't see my house as a free hotel or my money as their emergency fund. For the first time in years, I had a real community. Not a family that used me, but people who respected me. And that, I realized, was worth much more than all the false love in the world. 2 weeks passed like a dream. 2 weeks in which I woke up when my body wanted, ate what I craved, sat in my garden without anyone demanding anything from me. Mr. Hayes came 3 times to help me with the plants, and each time I refused to pay him less than fairly. Mr. Hayes, I told him, your work is worth what it's worth, and I respect that. He smiled and told me he wished more people thought like me. Eula had become my friend. She came over for coffee in the afternoons and told me stories about the local town. She taught me about the local plants. She made me laugh with anecdotes from her own family struggles. It was what I had always thought a relationship should be: reciprocity, respect, genuine affection, unconditional. One afternoon, as I was watering my tomatoes, which were growing beautifully again, I heard the familiar sound of approaching cars. My stomach tightened, but this time I was prepared. I was no longer the same woman who had received that call 2 weeks ago. Indeed, it was them. The 3 cars parked in my driveway, and I saw Estelle get out of the first car with a face that tried to show remorse but couldn't hide the desperation. The others got out more slowly, obviously reluctant to be there. I stood in my garden, watering can in hand, and waited for them to come to me. I wouldn't run to them like before. Hello, Mom, Estelle said, approaching hesitantly. Can we talk? Of course, I replied, without stopping watering. What do you want to talk about? Mom, we've been thinking a lot these past few days, and well, maybe we were a little inconsiderate last time. A little inconsiderate. As if calling an invasion a small visit. Inconsiderate. In what way? I asked, because I wanted them to say it explicitly. Well, we came without much warning, and maybe we expected too much from you without contributing enough. It was progress, albeit minimal. At least she acknowledged part of the problem. Jasper approached with that fake smile I also knew. Mother-in-law, we know you were stressed last time. We were also stressed from the trip and all. What do you say if we start over? Start over? How? I asked. Well, this time we can only stay 1 week, and we promise to help more with cleaning and cooking. And the expenses? I asked directly. They looked at each other uncomfortably. Well, we thought we could contribute something. Maybe $300 for the whole week. $300 for 20 people for 1 week. They still thought my services were worth nothing. No, I told them simply. No what? Estelle asked. No to everything. You cannot stay here. The ensuing silence was thick. I could see the genuine shock on their faces, as if they really thought their half-hearted apologies and insulting offer would change my mind. But Mom. Estelle insisted, we said we're sorry. It's not enough. What exactly are you sorry for? I asked, because I wanted to hear it. We're sorry we came without warning and expected you to bear all the costs without helping. It was more honesty than I expected, but still not enough. And what have you done to show you're truly sorry? I continued. What do you mean? Jasper asked. I mean, apologies without behavioral change are just words. What have you done differently? Have you found jobs to pay for your own vacations? Have you saved money for your expenses? Have you learned to plan and budget your trips? Their blank faces told me everything I needed to know. They hadn't done anything differently. They had just waited 2 weeks for my tantrum to pass. Iva approached with the baby, obviously using the emotional manipulation card. Cora, look at this little angel. Don't you miss your grandchild? Don't you want him to grow up knowing his grandmother? I looked at the baby, who was indeed beautiful and innocent of everything, but then I looked at Iva, who was using her own child as a tool for manipulation. Of course I want to know my grandchildren, I replied, but I want to know them in an atmosphere of respect and genuine love, not exploitation and abuse. We're not abusing you. Virgil protested. We're family. Virgil, I said calmly. Do you pay rent where you live? Yes. Do you pay for your food? Yes. Do you pay for basic utilities like water and electricity? Of course. Then explain to me why you believe you have the right to live in my house, eat my food, and use my services without paying anything. He had no answer, because there was no logical answer. Minnie tried the guilt approach again. Cora, your husband would be very sad to see you reject his family like this. My husband, I replied firmly, taught me that true love involves respect. He taught me to value myself, and he taught me that allowing others to abuse you is not love, but self-destruction. Estelle began to cry. Mom, I don't understand what happened to you. You used to be so generous, so loving, now you're cold and calculating. Before, I replied, I confused being used with being loved. I confused exhausting my resources with being generous. I confused allowing abuse with being loving. Now the difference is clear. So what? Jasper shouted, frustrated. Are we never welcome in your house again? You are welcome, I said. If you come with respect, if you contribute equally, if you treat me as a human being with rights and needs, and not as a free employee. But these conditions are ridiculous. Clyde protested. What's ridiculous about paying for what you consume? What's ridiculous about respecting others' property? What's ridiculous about treating an elderly woman with dignity? I asked them. They had no answer, because they knew I was right. They knew that what I was asking for was fundamentally human and fair. The problem was that they didn't want justice. They wanted to continue the abuse. They stood there for a few more minutes, looking at each other, waiting for someone to come up with a new strategy, but they had none. Finally, Estelle spoke. All right, Mom, if that's what you want, if you prefer money over family, that's your decision. But don't expect us to visit you again. I don't prefer money over family, I replied calmly. I prefer dignity over abuse, and I prefer solitude over exploitation. One by one, they returned to their cars. This time there were no tears from the children, for they had understood that this visit was different. This time there was no shouting or dramatic protests, just the resignation of people who had lost their favorite victim. I watched them drive away for the second and final time, and felt something I hadn't felt in years. Complete peace. That evening, Eula came for dinner. She had cooked chicken stew, and I had prepared rice with peas. We ate on my patio, watching the sunset over the fields, and talking about our plans for the garden. "Do you feel comfortable with your decision?" she asked me. "I feel free," I replied for the first time in years. I feel free. 6 months later, my house had become my true home. My garden flourished, I had a small circle of friends in the local town, and I had started taking painting classes at the community center. My days were filled with activities I chose, not those I was forced into. Estelle called me now and then, always when she needed something: money borrowed, babysitting, a problem solved. I listened patiently and then told her, "I'm sorry, sweetheart, but I can't help you with that." At first she got angry, then she begged, then she threatened. Now she just hangs up. I have learned that loving someone doesn't mean allowing yourself to be hurt. I have learned that generosity doesn't mean exhausting yourself for others. I have learned that true family cares for you, just as you care for them. And I have learned something even more important. It is never too late to reclaim your life, your dignity, and your right to happiness. That morning, I woke up to the sound of birdsong, made my coffee in my clean and tidy kitchen, and went out to water my plants, which grow as beautifully and strongly as I do.